Hi everyone. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it. I know the traffic was brutal if you were coming through that. I appreciate you going through that to get here. I think that's why there was like 70 people signed up. So hopefully a few more trickle in and join us. But I'm really grateful that you all are all here. People from different walks of life and different parts of ICW. So thank you very much. I'll just talk just really briefly about ICW. I think most of us are kind of aware of what we do, but just in case, so we're a nonprofit. This is actually our most recent location. Would encourage everyone to check the gym out. If you came in from the front, to check the gym out in the back. We're partnered with Beacon Capital, who owns the building, and we manage this gym as a place where we get to run our program, run personal training, and also manage the space for the tenants of the building. It's a really great opportunity for us because we get to do what we do, and we also get access to that beautiful space, and it's kind of built-in corporate partnerships with the companies that work in here. So it's a really good opportunity for us to make connections and for trainers to get opportunities in new networks that they've often been cut off from. So what we do is we amplify the voice and agency of those most impacted by mass incarceration, systemic racism, and more specifically social street violence, which we'll talk a little bit about. And we do that through a personal training apprenticeship program. So we get connected to folks, through friends, through teachers, family members, and we coach how to be a personal trainer as kind of like the crux of the program. But really, it serves as a two-way path. It can either be personal training and fitness as a career, or it can be a way that we can build a relationship and build trust with folks that need help but aren't necessarily used to asking for it. So that can lead to jobs in all sorts of different industries, and they always have a place to come back and train people if that's something they're into as well. And then on the flip side, a lot of our clients, a lot of our clients are coming from all sorts of different backgrounds. It could be literally anything. But a common thing is that perspectives get shifted because most clients have not met someone or don't have a close connection that's been incarcerated, or been just that impacted by some of the systemic inequities. So getting their perspectives in a one-on-one session where they are the expert in the situation, helping them get fit, has a powerful impact that we feel ripples out and hopefully changes people's actions and what they care about, and see people in a different way from having that human connection, that human interest. So that's ICW. I just want to, again, thank you all for coming. I want to recognize Jay Bhutta, who is a community member who passed years ago, but he was a really big community member, and we kind of dedicate these discussions to his memory. So just always want to fit that in. And I also want to introduce Emily, who will be helping me, or doing most of the facilitating and moderating. Just a little bit about Emily, I'll keep it short. She earned her doctorate in clinical psychology from William James College with a special concentration in Latinx mental health. She currently works at a forensic hospital in Worcester that serves individuals who have been found incompetent to stand trial and or not guilty by reason of insanity. Before graduate school, Emily worked as a therapist in the Massachusetts Department of Correction. She has had the privilege of serving in various roles at ICW, thank you, and is honored to facilitate tonight's. So I'll pass it to you to kind of introduce the rest of our great panelists, and then we can start chat.
So, sort of in the middle here, we have Michael Grinnell, who's a licensed clinical social worker and the player wellness counselor with the National Basketball Players Association. He's serving primarily as liaison between players and mental health services. And he's also the assistant director of integrated wellbeing services at Williams College, where he provides clinical and sports counseling services to young adults. And then next to him to his right, we have Dr. Kevin Simon, who is Boston's first chief behavioral health officer, appointed by Mayor Michelle Wu. And And Dr. Simon is a polymath, a physician scientist, a healthcare policy expert, and an inspirational teacher and noted writer. He's an attending pediatric psychiatrist at the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences, and an attending addiction medicine specialist in the Division of Addiction Medicine in the Department of Pediatrics at Boston Children's Hospital. He's an instructor at Harvard.
Well, you got all of them accolades.
Let me just say a couple more things. He is an instructor at Harvard Medical School and the medical director at Wayside Youth and Family Support Network, and many more. Oh, sure, absolutely. No problem. And then on our far end here, we have Megan Bartlett.
It'd be like that sometimes.
And Megan is the founder at the Center of Healing and Justice Through Sport. She has spent more than 15 years supporting organizations that use sport to promote youth development and supporting coaches who use sport to help kids heal. She co-created innovative coaching initiatives, has built capacity with community-based organizations, and is a faculty of the Neurosequential Model and Sport Certification Program. She's the author of a kid's book about trauma and a co-author of Redesigning Youth Sports, Change the Game. She speaks regularly on the unique power of sports has to promote physical and mental health, and essential skills that young people need to be successful on and off the field. She has her BA in Psychology and Sociology from Wesleyan University and her Master's in Urban Policy and Planning at Tufts. And then last but not least,
You know I get to do this one.
All right. Who gave him?
And then you know I get to do this one. And then Dante Dehi Beal is our last panelist here. Dante is an incredible trainer for ICW, an incredible musical artist, and an incredible public speaker, as you're about to hear. He has been an incredible asset to ICW in a lot of ways, and he's just started to take on his own, trying to get more people involved in the program, which I think says a lot about him. So excited to hear from Dante and all of you, so I appreciate you all.
I walked around Harvard one time. Just one time. Clap it up for me.
All right, so I'm gonna start. This will be a question for everyone, but I'll start with you, Michael. You could have been anywhere tonight. You could have been at the Garden. Hopefully everyone's recording that. Could have been at the Garden. You know, you're a busy guy. I know that from getting to know you, and it was a pleasure to put this together with you. What made this so important to put it together and to come here tonight? And then what's one thing that you're working on, either yourself for mental health or for others?
That's a great question.
Oh, sorry, we're gonna have to awkwardly pass this every time.
So, y'all can hear me okay? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I appreciate the invitation to be out here and connect, and mental health is something that's, I think very personal for me. My mom's a social worker. I grew up in a single parent household. I did all I could to try to resist becoming a social worker, but sitting on a swivel chair, looking at numbers just was not for me. So, yeah, it's just deeply personal, and I kind of think about the motto here of training from the neck up. I mean, it's something that we all live with, and not everyone's afforded the opportunity to pay attention to their mind and how it impacts their day-to-day. So anytime I get a chance to speak on it, I jump at it. So, yeah.
What's something that you're working on, either for yourself or for others, on the world of mental health?
So, as Emily said, I work at Williams College, and I'm also working as a player wellness counselor with NBA guys. So, I think, I'm trying to think past the stigma of mental health. I think, we're kind of at a point now, and I've talked, and of course I'm speaking from my personal experience of always talking about anxiety or depression, and I think that's becoming less stigmatized, but other mental health diagnoses and diagnostic criteria are not, and that can still be off-putting for a lot of people. So something I'm thinking about in conversations and under this umbrella of mental health is, let's not just stop the conversation at someone who lives with anxiety and depression, but try to be more inclusive of it. So, yeah, thanks.
Yeah. So one, thank you for having me. In terms of why am I here? So mental health, we talk about mental health, thinking about mental health is always important to me. And I think, like today I had a patient who's actively in the DYS system, or Department of Youth Services, so like juvenile justice. And I'm always thinking about what are the other non-clinical spaces that people can be in that are therapeutic. And so hearing about inner city weightlifting, it's like, oh, there's another kind of avenue. Because oftentimes, I don't mind that people want to come see me, but where people live, sleep, pray, eat, those spaces actually can be very therapeutic and actually should be therapeutic. And so often trying to leverage, hey, you know, why not think about this? And then, given that we're talking about, well, we will be talking about like sports and weightlifting. One of the things I often ask patients when they have anxiety or depression is, you know, well, what have you done this week for like more than 20 minutes? Have you sweat? And a lot of times it's actually, no, I haven't. And they're like, oh, I walked. I'm like, well, yes, we all kind of all could walk or a wheelchair. But, you know, physical activity actually is rather therapeutic. It can be. Yet not a lot of people have access to that or the opportunity to that. So that's why I'm here. And then in terms of things that I or we're doing, I can say on the city side, we do have a lot of initiatives, and I love the fact that here, because we have an office of returning citizens where we're always thinking about what are the avenues in which people who had the least of can get the most from. So this is again another venue. And we do have initiatives where we're trying to get more licensed clinical social workers, licensed clinical psychologists trained up. So there was an initiative we have with UMass Boston to fund 200 Boston residents who want to go into behavioral health careers. And then personally, today, actually now, I would be playing basketball usually. So I like to play basketball minimally twice a week. My knees would prefer once a week. And then I'm an advocate for engaging in actual clinical services since 2016. I myself regularly talk to somebody, and it doesn't have to be that you talk to someone when you're in crisis. Actually, I talk to them so I'm not in crisis. So that's something that I'm doing in reference to my own mental health and trying to help others.
Thank you, Dante. Why this is important to you and something that you're doing either for yourself, mental health, or for others.
So I got horrible short-term memory. So this is important to me. Mental health is very important to me because I suffer from a list of mental health issues. I spend a lot of time incarcerated, so the psychosis of a prisoner is real. I came out here to reintegrate to society only to find that a lot of things that I'm supposed to be involved in are triggering my mental health. You know, certain people, places, even smells and things. So it's like, for me, mental health is something I deal with on a regular basis. So just like pretty much the two speakers before me, is very personal to me. What I'm doing right now, to not be long-winded, is I'm sitting here talking with y'all. So clearly I'm not, you know, super duper in my head and my thoughts and dwelling and stressing about things that I don't have no control over, which is normally what I'm doing. And when I'm not here with y'all, I try to write music, perform music, or work out, which is why they're paying me to be a trainer. Or probably just to make sure that people could get in and out the door. I don't know.
I have a coach voice. Can everybody hear me if I talk like this? Yeah, good. This is important to me because I've sort of been a super fan of inner city weightlifting for a really long time. I got to know about what John was doing many, many years ago, because John's been doing this many, many years now, and just believe really passionately in the power of sport as a tool to help people feel a sense of community, feel a sense of belonging, but also to what Dr. Simon was talking about, the power sport has to actually help change the neurobiology of our brains in a positive way. And so any chance I have to talk about that, I'm like a closet neuroscience nerd. I promise not to bore you with too much neuroscience, but actually I think the brain is like one of the most fascinating things that we know like this much about. And the more we know, the more impact it has on how intentional we can be about the time we spend sweating or not sweating, and the way we interact with each other, and the way we think about the sort of ramifications of oppressive systems and what we need to actually do to change the impact of those. Personally, I am the mother of a little person who just turned 4. He was born on March 11th, 2020, which was which was the first day of the pandemic. They shut the NBA down that day. They told us Tom Hanks had COVID. Like it was a mess. And I don't know if that's related to the fact that I was pretty postpartum depressed, but it sure didn't help. And so I feel it personally also, and every day force myself to move my body. Yes.
Wonderful. And I thank you all for answering that. And I think one of the things that's important to address here, and multiple of our panelists spoke to this, is that we know that historically there's racial and ethnic disparities in the mental health field. For instance, as a psychologist, 86% of psychologists are white, and that's a problem. And we know that white communities have more access and utilization of mental health services, and that means that communities of color are being really left behind in what's offered to them. And so I'm curious, Dr. Simon, you were recently quoted in an article talking about the link between online racism and PTSD, and I think talking about racial trauma is so important in understanding the mental health impacts, and so I wanted to know if you could speak more to that and what you've seen in your work.
Yeah, so in reference to racism just generally, unfortunately to your point, there's not a lot of diversity in mental health clinicians. So I'll speak to my own personal experience with having patients who, what we say, racially concordant, right? So the patient is BIPOC, I'm BIPOC. And so there's someone I'm thinking about, this is a young 15, 16-year-old male, and he comes in hot, like really hot, frustrated. Most of my colleagues likely would call security on him because of the anger and volatility that he's demonstrating, right? He's like, man, that dog, man, that bitch, she didn't da-da-da. And I'm like, what's going on, right? I'm looking at my chart, I'm like, oh, it's his birthday. And he is frustrated that somebody promised him something, clothing of some sort, and they didn't come through on that, right? And I didn't tell him he shouldn't be upset. I didn't say, well, don't use that language here. I said, it is effed up that somebody promised you something and they didn't follow through, right? And me being able to connect with him at that point in time, I think allowed him to feel more comfortable sharing other types of things. And so oftentimes I have seen, unfortunately, in that kind of scenario, emergency services get called. And unfortunately, I have evidence to say that certain people that look like 4 of us that are up here get restrained physically more, get pharmacologically restrained more often. So I recognize, we all have emotions. Black male, white female, black female, and unfortunately, some of us aren't afforded in our society the space to actually demonstrate all of the emotions that we all have. And so when I have patients or clients, I do connect with them. And I think I was in the emergency room one time. The person was again hot, and there's like 3 security guards, nursing staff, and they want to restrain the person. And I'm like, let's not do how did I connect? I was like, he had a fade, by the way. I was like, when did you get your haircut? What are you talking about? I was like, you have a fade. You must have had a haircut recently. So I'm just wondering, you probably weren't like this when you got the haircut. He's like, Wednesday. I was like, okay. And literally, he's like, all right, now I'll just get on the journey, right? And they're like, oh, what did you do? I was like, well, I saw him, meaning we often don't actually see people, particularly BIPOC individuals, when they're in health systems. We see them as some entity. It's like, no, he's a person, she's a person. And so a lot of times, I think as a psychiatrist, psychologist, the power is in our observation. And unfortunately, in our society, certain people aren't afforded the ability to be themselves. And they're always others. So I often walk around with this badge. Why? Because if not for the badge, many people would not know I'm Dr. Science, right? Because in our society, you say, I'm not the person you're thinking, right? So those are some of the things that we see very regularly. And so when patients come in, they're experiencing that too on many different levels.
Thank you. And my next question is for you, Dante, if that's okay. And I'm curious. Maybe it's not. I'm curious if you would be open to speaking to your experience on sort of your understanding and evolution of mental health, and was it talked about growing up, or your experience of being incarcerated, was that something that was given ample attention to? Or did you have similar experiences to those Dr. Simon is mentioning?
Sorry, I was cheating. I'm thinking. So, the evolution for me, I feel like as of recent, more awareness has came up about mental health, and I think rightfully so, because there's a lot of things that were already implemented before, probably the last 5 years, that they knew mental health was going to be a big thing. So, for instance, probably about late 90s, early 2000s was the beginning of mass incarceration, which is actually why ICW is even a thing, right? So they speak for the agency of people who've been affected by systemic racism and mass incarceration. So with mass incarceration being the thing, I even spoke about it myself when I gave my initial, who I am. So prison psychosis, right? They had an experiment back in the day about with some rats, basically, and it kind of highlighted or illustrated exactly what was going to happen, what's happening right now, basically. So people are coming out, trying to reintegrate to society, and things are happening with them mentally that are already known. And because I feel like that was already, people were already privy to this information, right? They already knew this information. Mental health kind of became more highlighted to kind of mask certain other mental healths, if that makes sense, right? So while everybody knows most people suffer from mental health, because there's like, again, a list of things that qualify for mental health, whether it be anxiety or depression, and there's things that actually cause mental health that are regular, everyday things, even things like pregnancy, which you spoke of, postpartum depression, which is a very real thing, and it's very hard to detect. Excuse me, I spelled D-E-T, excuse my language. So it's very hard to detect. And I say that because some mental health issues are hard. You can't really, you'll look at a person and be like, oh, they look regular, and you can't see mental health on somebody. It's their mind. We're talking about the brain, that's inside your body. So the evolution of mental health, that's what I'm speaking about, has transformed a lot because more people are aware that it's a widespread thing, right? Everybody suffers from mental health in some type of way. Now, the reason I brought up prison is, even though we all suffer from mental health, there are people who suffer from mental health in a different sort of way. And it's kind of unfair for me. I feel it's kind of unfair to those people to kind of, the word I'm looking for is, yeah, but not normalize, more or less like, kind of like minimize mental health in a way that, you know, you don't look at these people, right, in the way that they should be viewed, which actually speaks to the point of what Dr. Simon spoke about, where he viewed a patient acting erratic and he was like, dang, let me get that haircut. So for me, I'm not a doctor and I can't say that this is 100% what happened, yet for me, in that moment when you looked at his haircut and viewed him as a human being, he was able to let that animalistic quality go. Because what I can speak about is being incarcerated, feeling exactly how that man probably felt when he started acting like not a human being, right? So when people don't view you as a human being, you start to act like something that's not a human being, right? Because you feel like nobody cares anyway. Oh, they don't, it's this or that, whatever it is that makes you feel or triggers you in a way that you're like, nobody really views me for what your point is or what you went through or whatever. Because in your mind, you gotta, pardon self, I won't speak to people's mind frame. What I will speak about is people's situation a lot of times cause them to act a certain type of way because they're triggered, right? That's what I'll say. And because you were able to view him, you were able to allow him to calm down in the moment and then realize he was triggered and then be like, you know what, this ain't even a situation for that. Because some situations do call for us to be animalistic and then a lot of situations don't. And so I feel like that, you know, I commend you for that. And I feel like just things like that will help us more with dealing with mental health in regards to like people when we don't really know, you know what I mean? Like if you don't really know what's going on, it's good to speak to people because communication is the key to pretty much opening up everything. You know? I don't want to give Ian back the mic.
I'll just talk loud, it's okay.
Talk loud.
Yeah,
So-
please
so
do.
something that Tika just said in terms of how mental health might be misconstrued depending on the population that is talking about it. So my family, my parents are from Haiti. They came to New York back in the 60s. My mom, I'm not sure she knows the word depression. And if she were to see her primary care doctor, or even if I said, well, Mom, are you depressed? She would not say she's depressed, even if she actually was. She might darn say she's tired, she's fed up, she's fatigued, she can't do this shit no more. But depressed is not going to be a word that most readily comes to her. Yet, in like screeners that we have, it's like, well, are you depressed? There's gonna be a whole population that's like, no. Yet, they darn sure tired, amotivated, thinking life would be better if they weren't here, engaging in activities that don't help them, that would actually check off, well, that's a symptom of depression, that's a symptom of depression, that's a symptom of depression. But if I ask you, it's not normalized to feel comfortable to say, yes, I'm depressed. But then there are some cultures where, I am depressed, Dr. Simon. And so I think that that's something that you're talking about is, and it's important about the cultural congruence. If I don't speak your language, I'm gonna miss the whole point. And this happened with trainees I have. So our clinic is dual diagnosed substance use and mental health. And trainees, like, they're talking to a young person, they're like, well, what substances do you do? And my guys are like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, okay, you do marijuana, nicotine, and then they say, oh, yeah, well, why did he just say that? Because the textbook does not say, well, ask them overtly about marijuana. It says, act broad, open, and the question, do you do substances, right? But if you're talking to a kid from Eastie about substances, that's not the language they're using, so you might be completely missing it. So when you just reference, sometimes we misalign, it happens so often.
And I can speak from my experience, a lot of clinicians over-pathologize Black and brown individuals who come to therapy. So if somebody who just spent 20 years incarcerated comes out, and when they go into a restaurant, they want to be in the back, like they're back in the corner so they can see everything, and a white clinician comes in and says, oh, well, they're paranoid. This is schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder. And now we're attaching a label that can have serious detrimental impacts to someone. And that's in their medical record. And that's because many clinicians don't understand lived experiences or haven't taken the time to ask. And so, yeah, it's really dangerous. And so then that leads me, we know 1 in 5 adults in the United States are struggling with mental health concerns. So it's happening across the board. And so my next question is for you, Michael. How do we approach someone who might be struggling with a mental illness, or maybe they don't necessarily believe in this concept of mental health, or they describe their symptoms in terms of physical ailments and they're not using that language, depression, and how do we help each other get support when needed?
No, that's okay. Y'all can hear me okay?
Yeah, you got it.
He's from Minnesota, so
I feel like I'm yelling, so yeah. But no, I think that's a great question. Trust, right? You have to trust the people around you. I believe in this quote by Malcolm X, where he says, "If I is replaced with we, even illness becomes wellness." And so I orient around community and my people. And I was late to going to therapy myself. I'd actually already been working as a therapist before I'd even ever gone to therapy, because I was someone who said, I'm applying all these tools, journaling, meditation, reflecting. I love sports, and I can work through anything on my own. And then I got in a position where I moved across states, came out here to Massachusetts. I had a whole new friend group, and I realized that I was the odd person out, where most of the people I was hanging out with had gone to therapy. And I had this sort of realization of, I'm doing things that are therapeutic, but therapy is therapy. And if you're playing a sport, you have a coach, you have a trainer, you have an assistant coach. All this help you improve your sport. I said, okay, I am at a point now where I've done so much to try to manage and take care of my mind. I trust the people who I'm around. They're all going to therapy. Let me try this out. And I was fortunate to have a session where I kind of disclosed, aspects of my life, and my therapist really affirmed and validated some of my experience in a way that I was like, hell yeah, I needed to hear that. No wonder people come to therapy. And I know for myself, I don't always say the most profound thing as a therapist, but that's okay. And so I really had this gem of an experience, and I was able to come talk with since then I'll say I've done individual therapy, I've engaged in couples therapy, I'm about to be married in 3 weeks. And I also participated in group therapy with 3 of my close friends, and we just had so much shit to unpack. And it was like, why don't we try to work with a professional instead of us trying to continue to clash with this? So now, of course, being on the other end on the other side of the chair, big advocate for people going to therapy and getting that professional help. But I'd say the thing that I oriented around most was just trust. Just have to trust the people I was around and say, you should check it out. And you don't have to you don't have to be in a crisis. It doesn't have to be the worst day of your life. You can actually check out therapy when things are going pretty well. At least that's how I considered myself when I first approached. I was like, let me just see what's going on here, and see if this person can offer me perspective about things that I've experienced. So I'm fortunate that the person did this.
Absolutely, thank you. And Megan, one of the things that Michael had mentioned was that he used sports and athletics as a way to sort of process through some of what he was going through. And I'm curious, in your perspective, you've talked about sports being sort of uniquely suited to help address the impact of trauma, and to sort of process through different mental health concerns. And so I'm interested in your perspective, how do you think sports can be so impactful? Where does this connection happen to make it so promising?
So lots of environments can be therapeutic, and many more, to your point earlier, Dr. Simon, should be more therapeutic than they are. And therapy is therapy, and other things are not than that. So yes, all of that. But the reason why I think, and I would say, sort of neuroscience will back me up here, that sport is uniquely suited to help deal with the impact of trauma. So basically what trauma is the experience of stress that overwhelms your system. And when stress overwhelms your system, it changes your system. And it changes your system in ways that make you more reactive and cause the kind of behavior potentially that you saw when someone was feeling, maybe backed into a corner and like they're going to, have to be hospitalized, or the kind of potentially aggressive behavior that we then, stigmatize and criminalize in Black and brown populations in a way that we don't in white populations. So because our systems have been changed by trauma, the good news is that they can also be changed back, right? The wonderful thing about the brain is that it's plastic and use dependent, and plastic means it can always change, and use dependent means the parts that you use the most become the strongest. And so anybody who's involved with ICW understands what plastic and use dependent is, right? It's building any kind of strength or muscle with consistent, regular intervals. And the best way to sort of change your system, the best way to sort of address all the neurobiological needs of changing what's happened to your system when you've been overwhelmed by stress, have at least 3 of these. There are more, but 3 things that sport has uniquely together are trust. Ideally, not all sport, right? But sport, when done well, has somebody who's there to protect you, right? And if you have if you're a young person and you have a trusting adult, if you're a not so young person and you have a trusted partner or trainer, somebody who you know will protect you, allows you to let your guard down in a way that you're not able to if you don't have a trusting relationship. Trust is the antidote to stress. So first and foremost, you have that trusting relationship. Second, you have the opportunity to move your body, which does change the neurobiology of your brain. It changes which chemicals get sort of released in your brain. It also makes you feel safe. Moving your body makes you feel safe. And I know when I say this, it sort of sounds like I'm gonna say 1 + 1 = a bushel of apples here, but movement makes you feel safe because way down in the bottom tiny part of your brain, the first part of your brain that was developed way down here, the reactive part of your brain, there was a connection made, and one of the first connections that was made in that part of your brain is the connection between the sound of your mother's heartbeat and having all of your needs met. And so every time you engage in something that's patterned, repetitive, and rhythmic, it tells your brain that all of your needs are being met.
That's why I like music.
That is exactly why. It is exactly why you like music, right? It is also why the music of your adolescence sticks with you more than any other music, because your brain is developing at such a rapid rate in your adolescence, and it's soaking up that pattern of repetitive rhythmic activity. But so you have a trusting relationship, you move your body, you get all these good chemicals, and your brain feels safe. And the third part is you build resilience. And we have this, people do not understand what resilience is, but resilience is the regulating of the way your body responds to stress. And so what happens when you experience trauma is that you get way out of whack. And so every time you experience stress now, it feels like the biggest stress possible. And sometimes when we're around people who have had a lot of trauma, we want to wrap them up in bubble wrap and hope nothing bad ever happens to them again. But the problem with that is that it might keep them from further harm, but it won't help them heal. Because the opposite of overwhelming stress is not no stress. It's the right dose of stress. It's being able to have a little bit of stress and then recover from that stress with your trusted adult, your trusted person, with your movement, with all of those things. You have a little bit of stress and you recover. You have a little bit more stress and you recover. And that actually creates a resilience to experience stress, because resilience is the ability to come back down from stress. Trauma keeps us from coming back down from stress. And so sport is uniquely suited. If it does all 3 of those things, it can do all 3 of those things really well and put them in a package that you don't get a lot of other experiences. And I'm aware aware of the time, and I want to make sure that there's enough time for folks in the audience to be able to ask our amazing panelists some questions. So, you know, I want to ask the next questions, all four of you, and, you know, when we think about, you know, everybody up here has some amazing and really unique credentials, and when we think about sort of what's something that people can take away from today, whether it's in the mental health world or the fitness world or wherever their careers or families and lives may take them, what would be your recommendation of one thing that people can do to help support their communities, whether it's around mental health, whether it's about creating safer communities, or using fitness and sport as a way to create connections? So if there's any sort of takeaways that anybody has, I would love for you to share those with the group.
Music.
Say more, okay.
Oh, that's all I got.
Okay.
Nah, I feel like, you know, conversations like this and just conversation period. Like the more you know, and then the more that you're able to share with people about situations that can help them, I think it'll be, you know, better just moving forward, you know what I'm saying? And just a big part of why mental health was so stigmatized is because people, even like Dr. Simon highlighted, was just scared to even say they had mental health issues. Like, oh, he said he asks people like, oh, would you say you're depressed? No, I'm just tired. Like, before my mom got into therapy, she was the same way. And now all my mom does is say, you need a therapist. Like, all right, but you know, long story short, even that therapy, you gotta talk. So communication is probably the best thing to help everybody with these type of situations, and it would be, you know, whatever area you're from.
I'll add too, because you just kind of sparked an idea, is people are getting really creative with how they talk about mental health and giving kind of buzzwords like mental health is mental wealth. And when I think of wealth, I think of capitalism, I think of like how social services are not funded, and like kind of breeds toxicity and mental unwellness. So in regards to communication, I think call a spade, right? It's okay to name anxiety as it is. It's okay to talk about mental health as mental health, therapy as therapy. I think when we start to move too cryptic and abstract, things get lost in the sauce, and again, we're kind of shying away from the thing that's right in front of us. So just calling it like it is. And then the other piece, real quick, is just we live in a very fast-paced culture. Produce, develop, create, work, all at the expense of being. Right? Doing at the expense of being. So just take time to slow down, be where you're at, breathe, and when we check in on people, like really check in. I'm asking how you're doing because I want to know how you're doing.
I would say a lot of times there are aspects of our just humanness that we try to pathologize. So like anxiety, you cannot escape anxiety. It's actually necessary to know, like, man, I gotta get there on time, or I have an assignment due, or I gotta pay the bills, right? Like, anxiety is actually a good motivator. And yes, we don't want to be overwhelming, but to that point, I should think about resetting our thresholds. That is what working out does, and I think becoming comfortable recognizing that struggle is like okay. If you don't struggle, you're probably not going to progress to the next thing that you want to do. And so I think recognizing that your experiences themselves are normal, and if they feel like they're not normal, or you're in a position where you find that you are doing something that results in an outcome that you don't appreciate, or your family members not appreciating, then it might be worthwhile to potentially think about, okay, could I talk to somebody about this? But often I engage a lot of adolescents and their families. I have to, reorient parents and say, oh, it's actually okay that she or he or they is not doing well all the time. I'm like, that's impossible to do. And I can't give you a pill to make you feel nothing, but you should want to feel happiness, sadness, anxiousness. I listen to music pretty regularly and I cry. Like you want all of those emotions. So I would just say something to take away is it's okay to have and feel emotions?
I think for me, what you all were saying is so important, and I think one thing about communicating that is really important to keep in mind is that we are not always in the best place to communicate, right? And so if we're stressed out, if we're dysregulated, if we haven't slept, if we haven't eaten, if we're not in a space that feels psychologically safe, then we're not going to be our best at communicating. And so helping people figure out what helps them get regulated in a way that will then lead to better communication, I think is really important. And for, and that's where, like, if you can do a walk and talk instead of just sitting down and face to face, if you can understand that sometimes across cultures, eye contact is different, means different things. If you can be less hovering over someone, you can change the dynamics pretty significantly by figuring out who needs what before they come to a conversation. And I think helping people think about how regulated they are before they try to do something hard or have a hard conversation or interact with another human is pretty important.
I just want to say too, I feel like it doesn't need to necessarily be stigmatized. It shouldn't be stigmatized, mental health, yet it also shouldn't be trivialized, right? It's not something that you use to get out of, washing the dishes at your mom's house. You're like, oh no, my anxiety's kicking in. I can't wash those dishes, Mom, I'm sorry. Somebody told me earlier today that a dude tried to utilize mental health to get out of cheating on his girl. He was like, oh no, see, because everything that I went through back in the day, I had to cheat on this. It's my mental health. I'm like, nah, that doesn't even make any sense. So I'm saying I don't think that mental health should be trivialized, yet it shouldn't be stigmatized either, and it's not a weakness, That's it, that's all.
Thank you. I want to open it up. I selfishly kind of put this together because I get to hear all these folks, but I'm sure you all are in the same boat as me, and I'm sure you all have a bunch of questions. So, we might have to keep it a little short just so people don't get out of here too late, but would love to open it up for a couple questions. Reg? This is ICW legend, Reggie.
Figure out what's going on with you to be express yourself.
Yes, sir.
Here at ICW, we deal with a multitude of people, of young people. What I want to know is, for the people that don't know, like me, for instance, been in the jail all my life, shot, paralyzed, don't think I have a mental, but I know you can't lie to yourself. Something's wrong, but you can't figure that out, and I'm still trying to figure it out. But how do you figure that? What's the signs for the youth that's going through that don't know they got mental health issues, don't even know they need help? What's the signs for us to see it? Because a lot of times we don't see it, and by the time you see it, it's, excuse my language, it's too fucking late.
Right.
I want to get there before it's too late. I'm seeing too many of our youth. I'm not getting ICW since the beginning. And I'm tired of seeing so many youth going through things and we're not there to really help them till it's too late. So we need to know really the signs for the people that don't even know they got mental health problems. Because when they don't know they have mental health problems, they don't want no help and they don't know what the hell you're talking about because they're not considered them. So I need to know what's for everybody else that works at ICW, what's the signs that we should be looking for.
I got some. Which is real
I
quick.
know for everybody, it's gonna be different.
Well, I think, when you have a relationship with somebody that is meaningful, they notice when your silence is loud. And so if you have people who you rub shoulders with or who are really visible in the community or who you see frequently, and you start to notice that they're not, that they're withdrawing, that they're isolating, you don't see them out as often anymore, that's one of the kind of most telling signs that someone's going through something. They no longer have the energy to show up and be social. They're not in the spaces they're typically in. People in the community haven't seen them and don't have a beat on them. Like, really, that's what I think is one of the most prominent things about mental health is when someone starts to intentionally recluse themselves from situations or environments, you have to pay attention and notice that.
And what can you do with that? Because I have a student like that named Alex. He's going through so much shit that for a young kid, it's too much for him. And now we're in a spot where he really can't be in the gym because he's created so many problems with mental health. But I don't want to let him go, because letting him go is just saying fuck him. I'm not going to say fuck him. Excuse my language. I can't say fuck him. So what can I do?
So, I'm going to answer broadly, and then I'm going to answer in reference to that young person. So, just like Michael mentioned, if they start becoming reclusive, potentially what like that young person might be doing at times, we would say acting out in a way where their emotions are kind of volatile all the time for small things, right? It's not to say you shouldn't be able to get loud or yell, but it's like, hold on, I just asked you to do this thing, yet your reaction was just out of proportion. And so like in a 5 and a 3-year-old, we call it a tantrum for a 5 or a 3-year-old. Adults and young people who are teenagers can tantrum too. And then we wouldn't call it a tantrum, but it's like your response was way out of proportion for the limit setting that I try to do. You know, mom says, hey, get in at 10 o'clock. Man, why I gotta be in at 10 o'clock? It's like, it's a curfew. Most young people have a curfew. Other aspects of young people when they're engaging in things that are not ideal. So school, they often start to miss school more often. Engaging in activities that adults can engage in legally, but young people cannot. So cannabis, vaping, alcohol, and you recognize that they're doing it. And is there this idea of like experimentation? In theory, yes, but well, how often are you doing it? And I meet young people who are like, oh, like every other day. It's like, okay. And then when they stop that engagement, oh, there's consequences of if you were engaging in cannabis and nicotine every other day, and I just pull it away, or you want to go on a tea break. And you don't tell nobody you're on a tea break. You're more irritable, you got insomnia, you're more aggressive. So there are multiple domains of life. So interpersonal relationships, how's communication with you and mom, or you and dad, or you and grandma, or you and guardian? Is it good or not good? Man, I can't stand that person. Well, why not? They seem to want the best for you, but you can't recognize it, right? Friendships also. So there are a lot of ways to assess if a young person is on the right or wrong trajectory. And in terms of what can we do for the person that has an A initial, you and I can talk afterwards, because we at Boston Children's Hospital, we have a program for young people that struggle with mental health and substance use challenges. And if they have a substance use challenge, it's an open access clinic. I mean, you don't just have to have a pediatrician that's associated with Boston Children's. If a mom from Rosendale, East Boston, Hyde Park, whoever are concerned, they might even just seen one vape pen. They can get seen in our clinic. And maybe they have Dr. Simon as their doctor. So we can talk after.
I would have just said that. I would have never used that word recluse. What did y'all say?
He said.
That's nice. I wouldn't have said that. Yet I do know that when people are suffering, that they do tend to want to be alone or like away from most people, and that's because that's how I feel normally. And that there's not no one size fits all for mental health. And I'm saying all of that just to say, basically, like you said, you're not gonna give up on them. And like me, I just feel like the reason why this question I've been trying to talk since you were speaking, because you directed the question to, but I've been trying to speak so much to that question is because I still feel like very immature at times. You know what I mean? Like, so like very close to kids. And the majority of things that kids want to know when they're going through that stuff is what you said, but not to hear you say it, for you to actually do it. Like you say you're not going to give up on him. He doesn't want you to give up on him, but people have probably told him that his whole life. You know what I'm saying? And he feels like, yeah, you could say, oh, I'm not going to give up on you, but what the hell does that mean? Just don't give up. You know what I'm saying? Every time he's acting out, or if he needs somebody to call, just be the person that he could call and talk to, no matter what. You know what I'm saying? That's
Everybody still call me grandpa.
amen.
I think we could take one more.
This guy.
I got my question.
Oh.
Yo, who was it that trying to use mental health as an excuse to cheat on their girl?
Hold on. I'm not good with names, brother. I don't know.
Yeah, sure. So I work in the architectural space, and I guess I have a task with the job of how to take what we're talking about tonight and apply it to spatial design, right? So, and I strongly believe that disability starts at the intersection of an individual and their environment. And so I was wondering if you guys have any guidance on how to take our conversation that we're having tonight about disability, about mental health, and apply it into the concept of spatial design.
That's a great
So it's a great question, and I can say that the city of Boston happens to be thinking about this. We do have an office of disability and accessibility. And so some things to think about, right? So even as you all are here, right, this is an open concept. There's certain colors on that wall that are bright. Behind some of the folks, there's foliage that is pleasing to the eyes. So there are things, there's a really good book, I think the title actually is just Joy. And each chapter is an element of joy. Openness, color, surprise. If you implement those aspects into the spaces that people exist in, right? Which is why when Dante was referencing like incarceration psychosis, if you deprive people of visual space of the sky, for instance, and they're just isolated, no color patterns to look at, your mind literally will say, what the hell is going on? And you may not even realize that it's saying what the hell is going on, because we want to be connected, right? And so in terms of the visual space or the general space, there are ways that you can incorporate color, flow, water, foliage, obviously accessibility of ramps and things of that nature, but literally the spaces that we're in can be inviting depending on how you design it. So the fact that you're thinking about it, one, is awesome. But again, I think the title of the book, I'm pretty sure it's called Joy, where each chapter highlights an element that is used in a spatial way, because the author is in design.
Another thing that you can think about and look for, the deinstitutionalization of long-term psychiatric facilities, where they used to call, pretty derogatory, but insane asylums.
Yeah.
When they started to rebuild a lot of those facilities, they would build them in circular fashions where there was windows all around, so that light was coming in all the time. And they did some studies and looked at it helped to reduce rates of depression when controlling for medication. And if you look at some of the long-term psychiatric facilities now, they're designed in a way in which that everyone has access to natural light. So that's something to think about, but very similar to what Dr. Simon was saying.
I'll add too, one of the pillars of wellness is just being outside, which talking about life and like nature. I know in my office I have a lot of plants, like green, obviously plants all around here too. It's just literally necessary for our well-being. So, and I always think about like who's on the margins of society, and of course how accessible is the space for them. So you want to be listening to everybody, make sure it's, we talk about flow, like, know that they will come, make sure it's for everybody.
I think actually one thing that I'm thinking both from Reggie's question and yours is that we've been skirting around but haven't named sort of outright in this panel, is that as long as we continue to live in a society that is white supremacist, patriarchal, and capitalist. There are going to be people who are allowed these things and people who aren't, and people who come from experiences that set them up to sort of disengage like your young person. And if we're not also fighting against those things, then we're sort of, you know, drinking from a fire hose, like, and so I think that's like the context of this conversation, but is so important in terms of thinking about how do we remove some of the traumatic experiences, institutionalization, deprivation of access to public goods, you know, access to beautiful green spaces is reserved for people with resources, and so how do we change the access and equity that comes with that without changing those systems?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
If you happen to be like a child psychiatrist and have a young person that you think would benefit from the activities of inner city weightlifting, how would said psychiatrist connect said person to inner city?
You got two of the best people right here. Right there, right there.
You just send us an email. Me and Reggie will meet with the person, and basically our intake process kicks off our trust stage. It's less about anything other than giving someone a chance to meet us, and us trying to earn that person's trust. So send us an email, and we'll hop on it.
And is it 16 and 17? Like, do they have to be 18 or what's the?
It's life circumstance.
If they thinking about it, I want it.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you all. That was good. Thank you guys so much. This was just incredible. I learned so much, and ways to get engaged with ICW besides besides connecting potential students or trainers. Obviously, we're a nonprofit, and I'm the head of development, so donate. There's a QR code back there. There's also our website, obviously. Become a personal training client. That is probably better than donations because it actually feeds to our core program and offers income for trainers. And you can train with Dante if you want some of that wit. And check out the gym on your way out. If this isn't the best location, like if it took you 2 hours to get here and that kind of turned you off from working out here, if you have anyone that lives nearby you think would be a good fit. Another way is introduce us to your company. Megan handles a lot of our corporate partnerships, group workouts or nonprofits. Shout out Boston Bulldogs. If your company, cares about wellness, cares about racial equity, or doesn't, and you want them to, you can connect them with us. And other than that, sign up for our newsletter, keep coming to things like this, keep sharing what you learned, and yeah, we're going to try to do more of these different topics, but suggest topics if you have them, and thank you, appreciate you.
If you've seen the movie Rocky, if you like Apollo Gym, you can come here and say, if you like Rocky Gym, come and do it.
Oh, and feel free to eat some food, hang out for a little bit, some snacks.